Hello, this is Ronald with Indicator Vault, and in this video I'm going to go over the linear regression channel indicator. And you see I've got the settings pulled up here. The default settings, the value here for the look back period is 50. I personally prefer a little bit longer, anything over 100 for me. I just fits my trading better. 200 I think is a good number. And then you can see the deviations. You can change all these settings, the line of the colors and such. And then this goldenrod color is the color of this slope indicator here on the bottom window, which is a great extra confluence to use to identify either overbought, oversold areas. So let's get into it. See, I've got a 4-hour Euro JPY chart pulled up. And so what this does is it plots basically kind of support and resistance trend lines, and they're dynamic trend lines. And you can see here right in the middle, you got this red line, the central line, and then an orange lines on the top and bottom of it. And basically this zone here in between here is going to hold most of the price action, and 90% of the price action takes place in here. We can see in this entire area pretty much only up here in the overbought and down here in the oversold. Those are the only two areas it leaves it. And so knowing that knowledge, we can use these areas and these lines to kind of confirm our bias as far as when it's going into overbought areas as certain take profit zones or price points that we can look to, either partial or close out trades once they reach these areas, and we can use them with other confluences such as other lows or highs. Now, this slope indicator on the bottom is another great confluence to have. And you see the zero line here is marked out. So anything above zero, we can use as extra confluence for overbought areas, and then below it for oversold. So quickly, just to look at, let's look at this area here. Now, we see it all in, the central zone. And so it's actually not telling us, that it's overbought or oversold. Even though we do see the slope above zero, again, we want to use it as confluence with what these zones are telling us. And so look here. Finally, we see it poke above into the upper channels with the slope still in the overbought area, well above zero. So now, as we can see it reach up here, we can use some other confluence and price action tools to now look for sells back into the central zone. So I've got this 4-hour supply candle marked out. So it confirms this candle when we see this break below it. And so this is now confirmed an area that we can look for sells in. But now let's go to the 1 hour, and we'll get to that other zone later. Now you can see right now price action does not go back, or the indicators not go back that far. However, we can see it trending down, and typically you do want to pay attention to the trend that the regression channels are telling us, right? So we can see a sharp downtrend, but let's look at this zone. So this zone was confirmed once we broke below this low. And then when that does, we now have this new range that we can use to draw a fib. So for me personally, how I would have used this is I like to trade from the zone of the 61.8 to the 70.5. You can see them marked here. So let's say you took a conservative entry at the 61.8. with your stop above the high here. About 100 pips. Well, excuse me. You wouldn't be doing that high. You'd be doing this high. So right at 50 pips, because that's the range that we would be looking at. But now remember, we framed our original idea off of the 4 hour. All right. So we've gotten in on the bottom here with our stop about 50 pips above that high. But where could we look at some reasonable take profits? Well, if we're expecting a lower low to be created here, which it does, that's just over a 1-to-1. But we wouldn't really reasonably be looking at that as a take profit area, because why? It hasn't even touched the top of the zone. Remember, this is the bare minimum we're looking for, right? So just to trade to that, now you're looking at a good 2-to-1, and then even more. Now that's about 5-to-1, 250 pips to the center line. As you can see, it keeps going, and that's just a conservative take profit here, because now we can look over here and line this up with creating a new lower low. And so a reasonable, it does take out some lows here, but they aren't really significant lows. As you see, it's mostly consolidation. The nearest significant low, in my opinion, is here. If we line that up with this, area, probably take profit at the central line for about 250 pips. To then just to take out this low, now it's an extra 100 pips at 350. And again, to hold to that line, about 375. So again, the extra confluence of the slope well above the 0 line. And now this, we see it poked into the overbought area. So now we're looking for price to come back to this central area. That's where it likes to hang out. So there's that trade. Now let's talk about how we could have caught this sell. So while we can see price has now gone to the bottom of the central area, it hasn't quite gone to oversold. As we can see in this range, it actually has not gone to the oversold at all. And so we can still, once it's gone to overbought, it's now hung around in the central zone, the balanced area. Can we confirm some biases to sell to now go into the oversold? So I've got this supply candle marked out. And again, this is the last up candle before down move. Now, I know this is typically I like to look for a close, but with such a strong move lower with a long wick, in my mind, this is now confirmed, especially also with this touch. We can see how this has been respected, across here, the top central regression channel. And so it's poked above here with a strong move down. So we can go to the 1 hour. And we can see, it's still slightly in the overbought area. It's trending downwards. The 1 hour is showing us a strong down trend. This is still above the 0, right? So we still have some confirmations that this can continue down. And again, just simple tools like a fib. If you find the range you want to anchor your high and low from, can give you some good entry points, right? So again, conservative entry, let's say, is at the 61.8 with your stop above there, about a 50 pip stop. But can we get some good risk to reward ratio on this trade? Well, just to create a new low, you're looking at over 2 to 1. That's 115 pips, right? And again, that's very reasonable to expect that to be taken out because you're just going from just slightly in the overbought area back to the lower end of the balanced range. And so it's very reasonable to expect price to come back into the lower part of this balanced range. As we can see, it easily does. But that would just be, first take profits of a little over 100 pips. But again, let's zoom out to the 4 hour. And again, that's that low that we just looked at. But again, we now have this other significant low, which is just barely past the lower part of the central zone. And so again, if you want to take partials at this first low that lines up with the central line, that's great. But look, you could hold, it's over 300 pips. So that's a 6 to 1 R&R just to create that new lower low. And again, it's reasonable to line that up with here. And if it's going to go here, it would typically, take out that low. And obviously we can see it easily does. I mean, if you just held to, again, maybe be a more aggressive take profit, it's reasonable to expect here, but a more aggressive, it's about 370 pips to that oversold area. And again, 500 pips for the entire full move down to the oversold area. But looking at the 4 hour, it's easy to expect price would move here because it never really moved down to the oversold area in the entire range. And so it's easy to expect it to get there at some point. But seeing now that the slope is trending more towards zero, it's still above zero, but it's getting close to the negative area. It's still in the oversold area. We can reasonably be looking for buys now, and we'll see how price action plays out. If this starts to dip below zero while it's still being in the oversold area, it's reasonable to look for trades back up into the zone. So I hope that helped for this indicator, the linear regression channel. And until next time.